What's up, everybody? And today we are reacting to 10 reasons you shouldn't mess with NATO. This is by US Military News. Please go over there, give it a like and a subscribe. I will leave a link down below to the original video. That's very important that you do that. I've been recommended this one quite a few times. I've been recommended it through comments, through sending on DMs and all that lot. And people really want me to react to it, so we'll see what this is all about. Especially because of all the, you know, there's news of what, Finland and Sweden. Is it Finland? Yes, with Finland and Sweden joining NATO, with Russia being a little bit more tense as usual. So I'm intrigued to see. This was made in May 2022, so obviously they haven't joined NATO yet. So we could probably get an updated video of this in about a year and see if it's improved, which it will have even more because of Finland and Sweden, which would be very interesting to watch and compare and contrast the two. Anyway, before we get started, question of the day comes from LukeTube. It says, question, what was your first experience like in being in the military? And what advice would you recommend someone wanting to sign up for the army in the future? Would you recommend it? Well, this is a very complex question. I can make a whole video on this. My first experiences in the military were when I did... You do like 2 weeks, I forgot what it's called, in training, in the first 2 weeks of training in the Royal Marines, where you're all together in one big room. And there was a few instances where I was like, oh, like, we're in a big boys world now. Because you have to remember, I was 16 when I signed up. So there was a few instances where it really hit me that I was in the Royal Marines and that I was in training. And that was, one of them was... we were waiting to get told what sections we were in. And I remember we were all together and the corporal said, you know, we're not going to do it today. We're going to do it in a day or two when we figure it out. And I remember catching myself going, oh, because I was excited. No one else caught me, but I caught myself doing it. I was like, hold on a second. Like, I'm not in school anymore. Do you know what I mean? And I could feel like... if I got caught doing something like that, I would get destroyed. And there was little instances like that where I went from being a 16-year-old in high school, having to grow up very quickly into the Royal Marines. And with that being said, would I recommend it? I would recommend it if you're a little bit older. I would recommend it if you're in the early 20s, mid-20s. 16, I think, is still a bit young, in my opinion. I feel like I was a bit too young and naive, and I could have had a better career if I was a bit older. So it really depends on the individual. Bit of a loaded question, and I definitely think I should make a video on that. If you want that, let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you for your question, and if you want your question, leave it in the comment section down below. But for now, let's pop this up, let's check it out, and let's see what it's all about. That's so cool. Camera right in his face. He's like, oh shit. That's really cool. I love footage like that.
The NATO alliance has practiced collective defense.
I wonder if we could pull, just for people interested,
and deterrence against evolving international threats. And over the years, its capabilities have changed accordingly.
Yep.
NATO's most powerful weapon, according to Jim Townsend with the Center for a New American Security, is the unity of the alliance.
Yeah. But I think I totally agree with that. I feel like that's the strongest part of NATO and the most important part of NATO, right? Is the unity.
The individual allies also possess hard-hitting capabilities that could be called upon were it to face high-level aggression.
Yep.
Here are some highlights of the many powerful weapons NATO could bring to bear against Russia.
Jeez. Could you imagine Finland and Sweden join NATO and then Russia try and attack them? Can you imagine the force of NATO on Russia? Russia would be obliterated. Absolutely obliterated off the face of the planet.
F-35 Lightning II.
Oh, look at that.
The air side of the NATO equation is led by the United States with the F-35 and other various aircraft.
That's a nice aircraft.
The 5th generation F-35 Joint Strike Fighter is an aircraft that rival powers have been unable to match its stealth and advanced suite of powerful sensors.
Yep.
While some NATO countries are looking at the F-35 as a leap in combat capability, others continue to rely on the F-16, an older supersonic fighter that can dogfight and also bomb ground targets.
You have to admit the F-16 is still a fantastic vehicle, right? It's still a fantastic aircraft that would obliterate most people, especially if you've got a really skilled pilot in there. Which actually reminds me, I want to see the new Top Gun film. Really excited to watch that.
And then some countries like Germany are considering European alternatives.
So is it going to tell us what the European...
Eurofighter
yeah,
Typhoon.
Here we go. I don't know much about these.
The Eurofighter Typhoon is a capable multi-role aircraft designed by a hand.
I swear I got something in my eye. I got an eyelash or some shit. Been rubbing it all day. It's been nuts. Oh, there, an eyelash just popped off. Interesting.
Full of NATO countries, namely the United Kingdom, Germany, Italy, and Spain, determined to field an elite air superiority fighter.
Yep.
France, which walked away from the Eurofighter project, independently built a similar fighter known as the Dassault Rafale.
Interesting. That's an interesting take.
Observers argue that the Typhoon is comparable to late-generation Russian flanker variants such as the Su-35.
Okay.
While each aircraft has its advantages, be it the agility of the Typhoon or the low-speed handling of the flanker, the two aircraft are quite similar, suggesting, as the national interest explained, that the Eurofighter could hold its own in a dogfight with the deadly Russian fighter.
I feel like at this point it's obvious that in every single aspect of the military, NATO would destroy Russia, because there's just so many allies of NATO at this point. Like in the air, in the sea, in the frigate, on land.
The U.S. provides conventional and nuclear deterrence capabilities throughout the regular rotation of bomber aircraft into the European area of operations.
Yep.
American bombers have been routinely rotating into the area.
I'd love to see one of them stealth bombers. I'd love to see one in real life.
Since Russia annexed Crimea in 2014, according to military.com. That year, the Pentagon sent 2 B-2 Spirit bombers and 3 B-52s to Europe for training. The B-1B Lancers are also among the U.S. bombers that regularly operate alongside NATO allies.
Yep.
P-8A Poseidon. There's also the maritime posture, particularly as Russia continues to rely on a submarine nuclear deterrent.
There was things that Russia were doing. I want to talk about submarines real quick, where obviously you've got like friendly waters, right, where certain countries aren't allowed in, like British waters or American waters and stuff like that, and Russia would just go in with subs and then pop up so you're on the radar and then just go back down again so they disappear, so that you're like, you know they're there. They're not supposed to be, but you know they're there. Russia are very sneaky with their subs. Very, very sneaky.
We need a stronger presence. That's why we're seeing Norway, the US, UK do more with the P-8As. Heather Conley, the Center for Strategic and International Studies expert. Facing emerging threats in the undersea domain, where the margins to victory are said to be razor thin, NATO allies are increasingly boosting their ability to hunt and track enemy submarines from above and below the water.
That's one big thing. Russia and subs are very sneaky, so the ability to track them is incredibly important, because some of the ones that Russia have are very advanced.
While there are a number of options available for this task, the U.S. Navy P-8A Poseidon patrol plane, which was brought in to replace the U.S. military's older P-3 Orions, are among the best submarine hunters out there.
Interesting. That's very interesting.
Frigates. Another effective anti-submarine capability is that provided by the various frigates operated by a number of NATO countries.
Something that my dad knows more about, since he was on one during the Falklands War. My dad's very knowledgeable about navies and stuff like that.
The NATO allies, in particular Italy, France, and Spain, all have frigates that have very capable anti-submarine warfare systems. Brian Clark, the Center for Strategic and Budgetary Assessments. They have active low-frequency sonars that are variable depth sonars. They can find submarines easily, and they're very good against diesel submarines.
See, this is the thing where one country's weak with one thing. When it comes to NATO, there's always a country or two who are stronger in that aspect, right? So these frigates that are really good at detecting submarines, the UK might not be as good at that, or America might not be as good at that, but there are countries that are good at that. It's like aircraft. Obviously, the US dominates the aircrafts, right? Because other countries are a little bit weaker, it's nice to have that in NATO. And collectively, together, NATO is just such a big fighting force. It's unbelievable.
These forces could be used to target Russian submarines in the eastern Mediterranean and into the Black Sea.
Yep.
Norway and Denmark also have really good frigates, he explained. They can go out and do anti-submarine warfare in the North Sea/Baltic Sea area, and they're very good at that.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Hey, they're all waving. Aircraft carriers.
Nimitz-class aircraft carriers. A last-minute addition to last year's Trident Juncture exercise, massive NATO war games designed to simulate a large-scale conflict with Russia, was the USS Harry S. Truman, a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier, and its accompanying strike group.
We've spoke about aircraft carriers on this channel before and how the US has the most advanced aircraft carriers out. They're huge. They're like cities on the water.
The carrier brought 6,000 service members and a large carrier air wing of FA-18 Super Hornets to Norway for the largest drill in years. One thing the NATO naval partners have been looking at is using carriers as part of the initial response, said Brian Clark.
Look at the size of that.
The United States sails carriers into the North Atlantic to demonstrate to Russia that the U.S. can send carriers into this area, from which it could carry out operations into the Baltics without too much trouble, he added. America's ability to project power throughout the deployment of aircraft carriers is unmatched, due mainly to the massive size, sophistication, and training regimen of its carrier fleet.
Yep.
The UK and France also have aircraft carriers.
Yep, we do. We do. Unbelievable bits of kit, them, aren't there?
Virginia-class submarines. Virginia-class submarines, nuclear-powered fast attack boats, are among the deadliest submarines in the world.
Yep.
They're armed with torpedoes to sink enemy submarines and surface combatants, and they can also target enemy bases and missile batteries ashore with Tomahawk cruise missiles. These submarines could be really useful to do cruise missile attacks against some of the Russian air defense systems in the Western Military District that reach over the Baltic countries, said.
I think it's obvious at this point in the video that we know that if Russia went to war with NATO, imagine, we could talk about America in the air, lots of countries all as collectively at the sea is unbelievable with the aircraft carriers of the US, the ground forces of people like the Royal Marines Commandos, who are obviously some of the best in the world, if not the best, not being biased there, they genuinely are, along with US forces on the ground. And it'd be just Russia, like, after not even being able to take most of Ukraine, they just get destroyed. Let me know if you agree by liking this video.
Brian Clark. You can really conduct air operations above these countries without being threatened by these air defense systems. So you would want to use cruise missiles to attack them from submarines at sea.
Yep.
Patriot surface-to-air missile system. Patriot, which stands for Phased Array Tracking Radar to Intercept on Target, is an effective surface-to-air guided air and missile defense system that's currently used around the world, including in a number of NATO countries.
Yep.
There is a need for an integrated air and missile defense picture, said Conley. That's certainly a high-valued protection for the alliance.
Look at the firepower they have alone.
NATO is also in the process of fielding Aegis A-shore sites, land-based variants of the sea-based Aegis ballistic missile defense system.
Interesting.
That can track and fire missiles that intercept ballistic targets over Europe.
Did not know that. That's very interesting.
AH-64 Apache
Oh, here we go. Look at them.
The Apache gunship helicopter, capable of close air support, has the ability to rain down devastation on an approaching armor column.
Holy
cow. The attack helicopters can carry up to 16 Hellfire missiles at a time, with each missile possessing the ability to cripple an enemy armor unit.
Wow.
The Hellfire is expected to eventually be replaced with the more capable Joint Air-to-Ground missile. The Cold War-era Apache attack helicopters have been playing a role in the counterinsurgency fight in the Middle East, but the gunships could still hit hard in a high-end conflict.
They're still absolutely unbelievable. Like, ridiculously good bits of kit they are, aren't they? Look at that. It just screams beast mode, doesn't it?
Leopard 2 tank. The Leopard 2 main battle tank, which gained a reputation for being indestructible, is a formidable weapon first built to blunt the spearhead of a Soviet armor thrust, and one that would probably be on the front lines were the NATO alliance and Russia to come to blows.
It wouldn't surprise me if... Let me pause this. It wouldn't surprise me if they did go to war. If they did, there wouldn't be that much ground war, but the amount of firepower that NATO has, there'd be very little troops on the ground, I think, personally.
Those armored forces took an unexpected beating in the fight against the Islamic State in Syria. It's still considered one of the alliance's top tanks, on par with the U.S. M1 Abrams and the British Challenger 2. Observers suspect that the Leopard 2, like its U.S. and British counterparts, would be easily able to destroy most Russian tanks, as these tanks are likely to get the jump on a Russian tank in a shootout.
Yep. Look at that. Shoot and move. Look at that. Look at the drone filming it in the air as well. Sheesh. Slow-mo that shit. Look at that. Oh! Good bits of kit. Is that it? Alright. Let me know what you think by commenting down below and liking this video if you think that NATO would absolutely destroy Russia, because I think they would. I think it wouldn't even be a competition at this point, guys. That was a great video. I genuinely really enjoyed that. Very informational. Please go over to the original video, give it a like, give them a subscribe, all that good stuff. Please make sure you do that. Members, you're beautiful, you're amazing, I love you. I couldn't do this without you. I honestly couldn't make videos every single day if it wasn't for these beautiful people right here scrolling past the screen. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. And also, thank you so much for the live stream that was on Sunday. We were trying to raise some money for a new heater for the school bus that we're in. If you don't know, we're in a converted school bus traveling the United States. You can check out a tour of that school bus on the Original Adventure channel. But our heater broke and we needed to get a new one. So we tried to raise some money and we ended up raising, like, how much did we raise, Steph? Like $520? Yeah. Like $520 out of 570 that we needed, which is absolutely unbelievable. So thank you everyone who donated. Go and check that live stream out where I nearly puke. It was actually really funny. Yeah, links down below to all my social stuff, my new channel, Sword and Scabbard, for all things fantasy, and my adventure channel with my wife where we talk about all things living in the school bus. Other than that, I love you all. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.